What the hell do you think you're doing? This has nothing to do with her. You're the detective, aren't you? You figure it out. Time's up.
The Yakuza series and its spin-offs are renowned for juxtaposing simmering crime drama plots alongside quirkier complementary diversions. But Lost Judgment is the first time that the side dishes have turned out to be more satisfying than the main course.
Pretty tasty, thanks.
An intriguing murder case at its centre doesn't quite go the distance thanks to a lack of late-game twists and turns and puddle-deep detective gameplay. But a surprisingly absorbing series of optional undercover investigations at a Yokohama high school go a long way towards redeeming the overall adventure.
Did that hurt? It hurt, right?
When a body is found decomposing in an abandoned warehouse, the prime suspect has an airtight alibi. Getting caught committing an entirely different crime at the exact same time the warehouse murder is believed to have taken place.
This man grabbed me on the train!
It's a provocative jumping-off point to be reunited with private investigator Takayuki Yagami and his likable crime-solving cohorts. And it kept me enthralled in its opening hours as a series of contradictions were picked apart and modern concepts like deepfake technology were posited that made me feel like I was leading man in an episode of CSI Shinjuku.
If you want my opinion on it, this looks real.
This initial intrigue doesn't last though, since all of the major parts and players in Lost Judgment's main case have been identified and unmasked by the start of the third act, which means any sense of mystery evaporates from there on out. I kept waiting for a rug-pulling plot twist that never arrived, and despite the customary escalating boss fights in Lost Judgment's closing chapters, I couldn't help but feel like it was just going through the motions.
Have a drink!
Now where exactly was the body? There's gotta be some clues that'll give me that.
I felt equally apathetic towards Yagami's detective work, which largely remains as disappointingly shallow and inflexible as it was in the original. Quick-time event-heavy chase sequences are repetitive and often ridiculous, running laps of the same small circuit and always seeming a few comedic toots of yakety sax away from being an actual Benny Hill skit. Meanwhile, the covert tailing missions are slightly less frustrating this time around thanks to the ability to hide in plain sight.
Tom, did I delete that app? Probably nothing.
But no less plodding. Stealth sequences force you to throw coins in very specific spots to distract guards before you can take them out, since just quietly creeping up behind them greets you with a frustratingly greyed out button prompt, while the new parkour sections are clunky enough to make an Assassin's Creed fan want to fall on their hidden blade. Meanwhile, the new gadgets in Yagami's investigation toolkit don't really elevate crime scene examinations above fussy pixel hunts. This wireless detector is good for locating hidden cameras, but not as reliable at keeping a bead on button prompts.
Here we go.
I did at least enjoy Yagami's ability to eavesdrop on conversations in order to sniff out new case leads. It's the one part of Lost Judgment's detective gameplay that made me feel like I was getting my hands dirty rather than merely having them held. And yet, despite all of these gripes, I can't say that I didn't end up enjoying my time with Lost Judgment overall. And that's almost entirely thanks to the surprisingly meaty undercover side cases that Yagami can undertake at the local high school. Playing the role of a Japanese Johnny Depp in a 21 Jump Street style high school sting feels refreshingly novel, and I enjoyed infiltrating the 10 different school societies, while simultaneously sniffing around for clues to the identity of an unnamed professor suspected of recruiting students into criminal activity. These school stories do a great job of contextualizing a lot of the mini-games found in Lost Judgment. Whether you're brushing up on your Virtua Fighter 5 combos in order to infiltrate the school esports team, or choreographing routines for its dance squad. I appreciated the way Lost Judgment cleverly takes previously peripheral ingredients and makes them feel vital. My only major issue with the schoolyard subplots is that in a game that details the potentially horrifying ramifications of bullying, including youth suicide, you spend a surprising amount of time as a grown man beating the absolute snot out of teenagers. It only takes a few pranks played on the maths teacher for Yagami to morph into the meanest form of Mr. Miyagi and send a gang of troublemakers from the classroom to the emergency ward. Which seems more than a little contrary to Lost Judgment's virtuous main message.
Holy crap, he kicked Sakaki down!
You must be seeing things, kid. And
Unlike the turn-based battles of 2020's Yakuza Like a Dragon, Lost Judgment stays true to the real-time beat-em-up action that the Yakuza series was built upon. In addition to the tiger and crane fighting styles that return from the original Judgment, Yagami now has a snake style which is heavy with slippery parry moves, and I gravitated towards using it more often than not thanks to the satisfying counterattack opportunities it consistently creates. However, Lost Judgment just can't compete with Yakuza Like a Dragon when it comes to sheer enemy variety, pitting you up against more or less the same stock standard street punks in the vast majority of its brawls. The scraps certainly increase in challenge as you go on, but it ultimately feels a bit stale when the 1000th head you crack has the same scowling facial texture as the first. Speaking of textures, the Kamurocho and Yokohama settings from Like a Dragon remain every bit as dazzling to walk around in Lost Judgment, especially with a dog in tow to help sniff out secrets.
Who's a good boy?
However, it's a shame that you can't buy items from Lost Judgment's ubiquitous vending machines like you could in Like a Dragon. Instead, you need to hustle to the nearest popo anytime you want supplies, ironically making these convenience stores seem somewhat inconvenient by comparison.
ありがとうございました。
That extra legwork is mitigated somewhat by the inclusion of a skateboard, which ex-lawyer Yagami can magically whip out at any moment to go from lapsed legal eagle to wannabe Tony Hawk. However, it's unfortunately pretty clumsily implemented. The button you hold down to run is the same one that activates the skateboard, and so I frequently found myself accidentally skating into pedestrians when I was merely trying to sprint past them. In fact, skateboarding is just one of the many features in Lost Judgment that looks good on paper, but is not so good in practice. It's true that you can enter violent motorcycle races, try and grind your way to high scores in a warehouse skate park, and go undercover at a Russian school for ninjas. And who wouldn't want to take a course in extreme ninja? But it's also true that the motorcycle races are hampered by stiff controls and an impractically low chase camera, the skateboarding tricks are on rails and not in the good way, and infiltrating the ninja school basically amounts to playing a game of darts and getting dragged along into yet another monotonous chase sequence. By that same token, there are a lot of really fun activities that only emerge over time. I was over 30 hours into my playthrough and well beyond rolling the credits on the main story before I unlocked a surprisingly robust arcade boxing minigame, for example. There are certainly a lot of hidden delights to be found digging around in Lost Judgment's sandbox, as long as you're prepared to invest the time and take the good with the bad.
Oh, great. Where am I?
Despite its intriguing whodunit premise, Lost Judgment's main story fails to sustain its suspense all the way to the finish, and its detective methods remain only slightly less superficial than those of the previous game. However, its meaty undercover side story set in and around a high school kept me playing for hours and hours well after the main story credits had rolled, in doing so revealing a lot of fun surprises that I might have never found had the classroom cases not kept me on the hook. This Yakuza spin-off feels far from being considered case closed, but here's hoping that Sega can show some better judgment in the series' future. For more IGN reviews, check out our verdicts on Deathloop and Tales of Arise, and for everything else, stick with IGN.